Sveta, if you are ready with your question, please go ahead.
Okay. 1 year ago, maybe you remember, Tom, I asked you about why my sister is so silent. She was dying. You said she was terrified, and you looked at her and in your way, and she was terrified. So she died. She repeatedly told us she was psychologically tortured by her husband. She died in a lot of fear because of that, and maybe she died because of that as well. 2 weeks later, out of nowhere, my mother died. 2 more weeks later, my 2 animals died. That triggered my bipolar, and my family had to go through a lot of trouble and pain until now, basically, chasing me and trying to pin me down. I was everywhere. I was running to Mexico, everywhere. I was really not feeling well. I couldn't deal with it, especially with the part that she was basically killed. So my first question is whether you can tell if it's somebody's doing, because you told us many times that we can hurt and we can heal, and some people use hurting techniques. So this is the first question.
So the first question is, can you use your mind to hurt?
No, if you can look into my family situation and see if this is the case.
Oh, to see whether or not, to see the reason of why your sister died. Was it indeed somebody doing things to her?
Yeah.
Well, it always takes two in those situations. When somebody's trying to do something to you, if you are fearless and you do not have the ego and beliefs, then they can't really touch you. They can't really hurt you. You're beyond their reach. So when you have, the voodoo person is hurting somebody else, it's because that somebody else that they're hurting is connected to them in some way, and usually fear is the connection. So it takes two to dance in that particular dance.
That's true.
One needs to be fearful, and the other one, of course, is fearful. If they're negative, they're full of fear as well. But yes, that kind of thing can happen, and it generally does happen, not necessarily in the sense that the person is an evil being trying to hurt the other. It's just typically the person is a person of high entropy, full of their own fear and full of their own dysfunction, full of beliefs, full of their ego, and they hurt other people, not intentionally, but unintentionally. They're hard on other people. They're demanding. It has to be their way. They find fault with other people, tell other people that they're not good enough, and so on, which can do a lot of damage to those other people. But it's not so much that person needs to hurt other people as it is that they're just dysfunctional themselves. And sometimes that dysfunction comes out as they do take pleasure in hurting other people. Sometimes they're that far gone. So those things happen. And yes, you have relationships, particularly between spouses, where they don't get along very well and they argue a lot, and they tend to have a very high stress relationship. In those high stress relationships, neither person usually lives very long, because that high stress takes its toll on the mind and on the body, both.
Sorry, but what about the multiple deaths in a family in such a short time?
Well, a couple of reasons for that, and possible reasons. One may have been it just happened that way. It was just there is a lot of random process going on in your life. There's lots of players and lots of things going on, and sometimes things like that just happen. They like to pile up on you. You know, we have this saying, you know, when it rains, it pours. You know, when things go bad, they seem to just keep going bad. Well, part of that is as things go bad, you get more negative. And as you get more negative, you tend to have, you know, more negative things happening in your life. And other times it could be that the system is just giving you a challenge. You know, these things are about to happen anyway. They're going to happen sooner or later, maybe within the next month or so. And perhaps it would be something for you to be challenged with, to be able to deal with. And, but it's not going to, the system isn't going to, you know, kill your pets or kill a person just to give you the lesson. You know, it's not that kind of a system. It's a system that does things that helps everybody grow and everybody lower their entropy. But it can arrange things within the uncertainty to help provide lessons and structures for people. That does happen all the time. I know I've been in situations where it's sort of, when it rains, it pours, and it just looks like one disaster after next tends to happen. And I've often taken that as a challenge to me to deal with all of those and not let that get me down, not let that put me in a negative space, but to deal with each one of them and to realize that no matter how bad it looks, that's usually your ego talking. It really isn't that bad. If you look at it from a bigger picture, okay, there's a series of deaths going on. Well, for your sister's case, she ended a very dysfunctional situation and now can be in a very functional situation. Well, that's a happy thing. She's gotten out of a terrible situation, one that wasn't working for her. Well, it's good to get out of those kinds of situations, and you can say, well, that was good. Maybe that's why she got that illness, because she needed to get out of it, and that's the only way that she knew how to get out of it. So in that case, her passing was a very positive thing. She was ready to restart. She had kind of got wadded up in that existence, and you know, rebooting was the right answer for her rather than to continue to go in a bad way. And then the fact that it would happen to another person in your family would not be that unusual, because somebody's passing usually is a very high stress thing, and stress tends to damage your health. And if your health is very marginal to begin with, the stress of a death can create another death.
Yeah, she literally collapsed.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. This removes fear, at least, of somebody's trying to kill my family.
No, it's not like that. No, it's not like that. There is no outside force that's trying to, you know, wreak havoc on your family. That is not, you know, that's not likely. I don't see any of that. It's just situations happen that way. And then the pets dying, who knows? You know, that, again, falls in the margins. Maybe that was because they were ready for that. Maybe they were older. Maybe there was the disease they had. Who knows? But stuff like that just happens. Yeah, let the fear go. There's nothing out there that's targeting you. It's just a matter of these things happen, and you need to deal with them, and deal with them in a positive way. You know, death is not a terrible thing. Death is a reboot. It's a moving on. It's getting unstuck. It's getting out of, you know, what you were doing and getting a whole new set of experiences to work with. It's a very positive thing in the bigger picture. It's not a terrible thing.
I don't know.
At all.
I'm done. I'm not rebooting. You know what I mean? No reincarnation for me. I'm done. I'm kidding, of course, but I'm so tired. Okay, so the second question is, so I think 2 years ago I started to watch your videos and practice meditation. It was hard at first and everything, but then it became to the point that I got so good at it that I basically live there. It's kind of hard for me to live outside of there. You know, all I have to do is close my eyes and everything is moving. I can go there and snap a shot for my painting, or I can go there and um, grab a poem. I even published a book, and it's kind of surprisingly successful for the beginner, you know. And then a few days ago, and it was always very light, very fairy tale-ish, a flood of visions and dreams. Then I had a terrifying, most real nightmare, if it classifies as nightmare because it was real. The man came in and laid on me. It was so real, every sound, breathing. It was too intense and real for a dream that scared me into what if I'm going into places I'm not ready for, or if it's a test for the next level, which is the second question. Is it a test for the next level, or it's saying stop going there?
Oh,
And also if it could affect what is going on in my family. You know, like maybe I'm causing something by going there so often.
yeah. No, I don't think it has anything to do with your family. It's not to get you to stop going to the non-physical. That's a good thing for you to do, although you need to stay balanced in it. You can't just retreat and escape into the non-physical. You need to balance interaction and connection with the outside world as well. So you do need more balance, but I suspect that what you got was a fear test to see how you would respond to something like that, and possibly the system may be trying to nudge you to more balance, to where you engage in the outside world as well as with the inside world. But I don't know. I'd have to know more about your situation. Sometimes, you can be very much engaged in the non-physical, and that's okay. And other times you can be almost entirely engaged in the physical, and that's okay. But there needs to be some balance, even though you can be out of balance for short periods of time either way. You need, in general, to have a balance. So it's possible the system would like you to have more balance. That's a possibility. It's also a possibility it was a fear test. Although with all that you had just gone through, I would think it would probably not be a good idea for the system to give you a fear test when you are already having, a lot of trouble. That wouldn't sound like a very smart move. But sometimes the system is kind of automated, and it just cranks on and does its thing without a lot of thought, and that occasionally happens.
Great, makes so much sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sveta. Mao, if you'd like to go ahead with your question.
Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Tom, I have been following some spiritual teachings for some time because I think that spiritual evolution is what really matters at the end. But experiencing this virtual reality has been presenting a very big challenge for me. What could be a way to know and understand what is it that I would really love to do in this lifetime? Because I hope that with those findings I will be able to live a social and financial productive life and eventually see how everything gracefully falls into place as a result of living with passion, joy, fun, motivation, and self-discipline. So far, I have tried to reconnect with my inner self, trying to understand how and at which point in my life self and social fears began to be a cause of my limitations, and how those fears have got me away from following my own unique path. However, over the last 10 years, I haven't got my answers yet, and I am 27, so I have been spending 10 years in this, and I don't seem to be able to discover what is it that I need to aim for and to have fun with it and to really enjoy it regarding a productive adult life.
Well, a couple of things come to me here. They are, you need to grow up and, become love, get rid of the fear. You need to work on those fears, get rid of them, work on the ego, things that happen in your life that are negative. Find that negativity related to ego, related to fear, and work on getting rid of it. You have to just have growing up as your goal. I just want to grow up. I want to get rid of my fear and get rid of my beliefs and my ego. And if that's your goal, then the passion, the joy, the fun, and all of that will just come along without you trying to do any of it. It just as you grow up, those things should happen. They just are part of being grown up. You don't have to make the joy and the passion and the fun the goal. It just happens. The goal is just to grow up and to make better choices, to get rid of the fear, to see bigger pictures, to appreciate other people, to be helpful, to help other people, to see them, and accept them the way they are, to be caring, all these things that have to do with growing up and becoming love. That's the goal. The joy and the passion and the fun of it just happens on its own. So I think if you try too hard and you push forward too seriously, that's a funny way to say it, but if you try too hard, you often get stuck in a kind of process rut that you don't seem to be making much progress in, because you're working at it, but that working often comes from the intellect. You work at it from the intellect. The intellect is saying, okay, what should I do next? What should I do next to, make progress? And then you come up with some answer. Well, I should be, doing this. Okay, then you go do that. Well, all of that's intellectual. And that intellectual stuff won't really get you very far. You have to be it, not just go through the motions, not think it, not work at it from the intellect, but rather be it at the being level. So this matter of, let's say, caring for people and having empathy and appreciating all of the good things, the gratitude and the things that, you can just experience in your own life. Those have to be things not that you intellectually look for and try to find, but things that you feel. You feel that compassion for others. You feel that empathy for others. And how can I help? And what can I do to be of service here and be useful to people? Not from an intellectual point, but from a being level point. And I don't know if that difference is making sense to you, but I do find that people who lead with their intellect often tend to get in a rut and they get stuck and they have trouble making progress because they're trying to be something they're trying to be it, but they're never really just letting go and being it. They're not they want to be kind, and they may even try being nice to people, being particularly kind, but as long as you're doing that from the intellect, it's an action. It's an acting. It's not a being. You have to just be kind because you are, not because you think you should be. So getting out of the intellectual mode, getting into the being level mode, becoming authentic and just being who you are, not trying to be good or trying to lower your entropy. Just be it. Just be who you are. And then let those chips fall where they may as you are yourself. So maybe that would be a thing for you to start working on, is just finding the authentic you. But if you overthink things, you get stuck in the intellect, and the intellect will only take you so far. The intellect will give you a direction to go in, but you actually have to go there in the being level. You have to be it. So is that helping?
Oh yeah, Tom. Well, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, it makes a lot of sense to me what you are telling me, and I think yes, I am seeing things from a very intellectual perspective when it comes to my daily life, and I let spiritual thoughts go on, but I don't let them into my daily life. So I think that's a problem. I
Yes.
just have them as thoughts and as ideas, and I live my life with my intellect. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. But I think I get the point. I think I really get the point, and I am very grateful for that. I think I know what I need to do, really. Thank you very much. And well, do I get the chance to ask a second question?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, thanks. Well, recently I started to practice meditation. By meditation, I mean that I tried to ignore whatever was happening in my mind and whatever was happening on my body, ignoring everything for a period of time and just trying to be without thinking. And well, the first day that I did that, it was great. I mean, I felt great and everything was very pleasing. But the second day, it was actually kind of terrifying. Uh, I was like busy with my work and busy with other things, so I said to myself, well, I will force the meditation now because I want to find something. Even if I am not feeling like meditating now, I will do it because I want to find something. So I forced meditation by forcing me to close my eyes and stop doing anything. And well, after a little while, maybe in 15, 20 minutes, it started to getting really terrifying. I started to get really anxious. I started to get some really fear dips. So I opened my eyes and then I tried to go out to the garden and relax and stuff, but it seemed like I wasn't able to return to this reality, and that feeling was really scary because now I was trapped in the middle of the night in a place that I don't know, and it felt really terrifying. So my question is, should because usually people don't say this about meditation. I didn't expect to be terrifying, but it was. So my question is, should I move on with meditation, or should I meditate in another way, or I need to slow down, or just face it as it comes, regardless of how terrifying it can be? What are your recommendations of this? Because it is my second day only on meditation.
Okay. You should continue with the meditation. Yeah, continue with the meditation. That's an important process for you now because that's where you're going to get in touch with your being level. And you are living life out of your head, out of your intellect. And that is part of the problem. When you forced yourself in this meditation to do it anyway, even though you didn't feel like it, that was not a good thing. Meditation you have to come to gently because you want to, because it's something you want to do. If you're doing it on a forced march, that is likely to take you someplace that you don't want to go. What happens then is because you don't really feel like it, you're meditating but not wanting to meditate, your intellect gets in the way and starts to create problems which will kind of end the meditation, but that you force the meditation anyway, so you create more problems. And that issue you had with not being able to get out of it and that being scary, that was just your own fear. There really was nothing there. You weren't trapped. You were trapped in your own fear. You were trapped in your own intellect. It was, if you could have just said, oh, well, I'm a little spacey now. Let me just lie down and take a nap. and not been too upset with it, it would have just disappeared. So it's not that there was something out there that was going to get you, or that you had wandered into a space that you couldn't get out of. That was just fear when you interpret it that way. You were in an unpleasant state because your desire to meditate and your desire not to meditate were kind of having a war with each other. And as that war kind of got going, it created a dysfunctional state that caused the difficulty. So if you don't feel like meditating, you're not in the mood, then don't. Just let it go to another time. That's not a good time. Forcing it is not good. Now, on the other hand, if you can say, well, I'm tense, I'm kind of uptight and stressed now, relaxation would really be nice. So I'm just going to let all that go and meditate for a half an hour just to release the stress. That's fine, because then you can let it go. You're releasing stress, and that'll work okay. But you got in this loop where your intellect wanted to do one thing and you wanted to do another, and a battle took place, you against yourself, and that ended up being a very unpleasant place to be in. So you can be stressed and still meditate, but you have to want to. And if you're just beginning meditating, you have to be meditating for at least 3 months, like daily for 3 months, before you really get a sense of what's going on and what it's like. You can't get to conclusions too quickly. You have to just kind of take the experience as it comes. I'd say, wait a couple of days past the bad experience, get to a place where you really feel like meditating again, and doing it just for a short period of time. Gain a little confidence in the process. And then maybe do it a little longer time until you gain more confidence in the process. Because as you lack confidence, that means you have some fear about it. If you have fear about it, you will tend to make those fears come true. Fear tends to create what it's afraid of. It manifests what it's afraid of. So go back and kind of start over, if you will, but do it gently and kindly. You don't push it on yourself. Just let it be what it is. And if you start to meditate and the thoughts just keep coming and you can't really get into that mood, then say, well, it's not a good time. Let it go, and don't push it. But when you live out of your intellect, you're used to pushing things. Well, no, I've decided to meditate, so I'm going to meditate. So let's just do this thing anyway. And then you start pressing it, because that's the way intellectuals work. Intellectuals, come to choices. They make choices, and then, damn it, they're going to make that choice happen regardless of what's going on. And that's just living out of your intellect. And that is not a real good way to approach a meditation. You have to approach it from letting go, not from being in control.
Okay, Tom. Well, everything makes a lot of sense. And yeah, since that happened, I haven't meditated since that happened. So I'm guessing I'm feeling just a little bit of fear towards meditating again. But I will take your advice and start little by little again, not forcing it, and just expecting it to manifest again, but just to know that there is nothing to fear about meditation.
Yeah, there is nothing to fear about it at all. And you will find that what you're really accomplishing is just getting acquainted with your own consciousness. That's what meditation will do for you. It will get you acquainted with your own consciousness. It's not going to put you in a scary place. The fear that you found was all self-created. So yes, kind of come up to it slowly, build your confidence, because it's a really good thing to do. People who are out of balance toward the intellect running their life need to meditate. People like that particularly need to meditate. It'll help you find more balance in your life, and everything, all the aspects of your life will get better if you meditate. But it will take probably 3 months before you'll kind of get used to it. So take it slowly.
Okay, Tom. Well, thank you very much for this. I really appreciate it, and I hope that we meet again on one of these sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you both. Adam, you have submitted a question. And also, some others have joined us late, so I'll let you go ahead with your question, Adam. And if any others who are present here have a question, please type it into the chat box, and we'll have your question. You can go ahead and ask your question as that goes. Go ahead,
Hello.
Adam.
Tom, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine, Adam.
What's up? Good to see you, pal.
Yeah.
So my question was on hard style teachers, what I'm going to call. And I think I wrote it out, but I think it's like, the military, they're really hard training, and what your opinion was on hard style teachers. There's been a lot of Olympic champions who've had really hard mentors, but they say it's made them a lot better. And what is your whole concept on that, on like a hard style learning approach? And does that apply to entropy reduction? And have you had any hard style mentors in your life?
Okay. That kind of hard style, as you call it, teaching is only going to work and is only appropriate for some people. It's not like that's a style that works really well for everybody. Some people can relate to that and others don't. Some people let that hardness kind of drive them forward. Then if more is demanded of them, they try all that harder, to meet that demand. And they end up going maybe farther than they would be on other methods. Other people are just the opposite. If somebody pushes them, they push back. If somebody says do 100 push-ups, they don't feel like doing push-ups at all because they don't like being ordered around. So it's just a different kind of personality. Some people do well with that, some people don't. And it kind of depends on what it is they're learning to do. If what they're learning to do is something very simple. Now, what I mean by simple is it's not a lot of complexity in choice making. There may be complexity in process. Let's say what they're trying to do is something athletic. What they're trying to do is, be a good tight end on a football team, or what they're trying to do is, throw a javelin farther than anybody else, or whatever, run the mile, quicker than anybody else. That's what I would say is something that's very simple. It doesn't have a lot of choices in it. It doesn't have a lot of structure in it. It's just getting very, very, very good at a very specific, very limited thing. Okay, now in those instances, the hard teachers or the hard coaches probably do pretty well, because somebody has to be really motivated to be there in the first place. If what you're trying to do is throw a javelin farther than anybody else, then that's something you really want to do. And if you really want to do it, then having somebody that pushes you probably works pretty well for you. And because it's so simple and doesn't have any complexity to it, you just practice and practice and practice and exercise and, lift your weights and get into shape and practice some more and so on, then that kind of a job is one that a hard driving teacher can work wonders with. On the other hand, if what you're trying to do is, let's say on the opposite end, what you're trying to do is grow up and, decrease your entropy and become love, well, a hard driving commander will be just totally dysfunctional. Wouldn't be any value whatsoever. Would be just the opposite. It would make everything harder and more difficult, and it would just be a terrible thing to do. So I would say that, my attitude toward the hard training like the military and so on, if the job is very simple, for the military, they just want you to obey, follow orders. Take that hill, you take that hill. You don't say, well, why? Why that hill? Why not the next hill? And, so on. You just do what you're told, and you do what you've been trained to do. Those things are simple. That's like in the Tinker Toys level of interaction. It's a very simple process. Now, I don't mean that it's necessarily easy to do. It's hard to throw a javelin faster or harder or further than anybody else has thrown it before, but it's just a simple thing to do. But anything that's complex that has to do with like growing up or has to do with mastering a new job. Let's say you take a new job at a company, and it's a job that's very challenging for you because you've never had a job like that before. Okay, maybe you've always been on the line doing the work down at the bottom level, and now you're a manager and you've never managed before. Well, somebody that gives you a lot of hard pushing is just going to be counterproductive, because management takes a lot of skills, a lot of people skills, a lot of understanding, a lot of big picture viewpoint, a lot of things that you can't do by pushing somebody, you see. So my take on that would be, if it's a very simple task you're trying to get done, like you want to be like Cool Hand Luke and swallow more eggs than anybody's ever swallowed before, then yes, you can have a coach that, pushes you and you'll get good at it. But if you want to do something that's more complicated, like having a good relationship, like, having a really good marriage, or, raising your children, well, having a coach that pushes you is totally counterproductive. And it's not helpful at all. So for the simplest things, yeah. For anything else, no.
All right, great. Thank you. So I'm assuming it wouldn't be good to push my kids in that manner either. My little toddler, giving them hard style.
No, not good at all. Pushing children to grow up is usually very counterproductive. They end up doing the opposite, because people don't like being pushed. They resent being bullied. They resent being pushed, and when you push them, they may be forced to do what you say, but eventually they'll do just the opposite. And they will do it even though in their mind they're not doing it just to get even or to spite you, but at a being level, that's what's going on. They have to do that for their own self-respect. They couldn't respect themselves if they just let themselves get pushed around. They have to go the opposite direction. So if you want to force children to do the wrong thing, all you have to do is demand incessantly that they do the right thing. You will push them to do the wrong thing. So no, parenting is one of those things that takes that's a complex, very complex job, being a good parent. And it's a very complex job of growing up when you're a child. So that takes a very nuanced and understanding hand, not a hard hand.
Thank you, Adam. Jordan, if you'd like to go ahead with your question, please go ahead.
All right. Can you give your definition of ego, and with an example of acting from your ego, and then an example of, I guess, an egoless state? I'm kind of caught up on the definition of ego that you use as it relates to identity and as it relates to thoughts. So if you could give your the MBT definition of ego, and then an example of kind of like a Goofus and Gallant kind of thing, like this is acting from an ego state and this is not acting from an ego state kind of thing, if it's possible.
Sure. My definition of ego is awareness in the service of fear. That's ego. Awareness in the service of fear. Now, awareness in the service of love is not ego at all. When I talk about ego, it's not about that you are aware of yourself or aware that you exist, or aware of the capital I that is you. That's just awareness. Awareness is aware of self. Self-awareness. Okay, awareness is a good thing. That's you being conscious. All consciousness is aware. So let's say here's a difference between ego in the service of fear is typically ego that is trying to justify things. When you get upset, when you get angry, that's your ego. It's about you. You want things to be the way you want them. You have a sense of what's right and the way people should be. And when they're not that way, you find them annoying. You'd like to explain to them how they ought to be different. All of that's ego. You see, that's all you trying to control the world to be the way you want it. That's because you have fear that if the world isn't the way you want it, it's going to be bad. It's not going to be, it's going to be suboptimal because you know what's best. Well, everybody feels that way, that they know what's best, and they don't agree on what it is that they ought to be doing or what you ought to be doing. So it tends to be, ego versus ego out in the world is what we do. Most people make most of their choices, probably 80% of everybody's choices that they make are made out of fear, ego, and belief. It's the way we tend to operate. It's the nature of a high entropy consciousness to do that. So it's normal. So my definition of ego as awareness in the service of fear turns out to be almost exactly the same thing as Freud's definition of ego. He had ego as the sense of self, but because most people are driven by fear, then most people's sense of self is ego and fear related, which makes my definition and Freud's definition about the same thing. Okay, so let's go to the other example. What is awareness in the service of love? Well, awareness in the service of love is awareness about other. It's about other people. How can I be helpful? As opposed to what can I get and what do I need and how can I get it? How can I give? As opposed to what can I get? Awareness in the service of love is not about self. Fear is always about self. So when you are fearful, that fear is always about you. So anything that has to do with your fear is about you. It's self-centered, self-focused, and that's ego. So now it's very difficult sometimes to tell the difference between if you do an act or you do something, whether that's out of ego or whether that's not. That's not necessarily a clear thing to judge, because you have this ego is such that it justifies everything. So when you do something, your ego tells you that that's a good thing to do. You couldn't have done anything else. That was the best choice, and that was a fine thing to do. And your ego will tell you that whether that's true or not. Because the fear at the bottom of that is doing things that aren't right, doing things that aren't helpful, and having a wrong understanding, being trapped inside your beliefs. Nobody wants to feel wrong. Everybody'd like to feel right. So that ego always tells us that we're right. So when we say, well, I'm going to do this and I don't want it to be out of my ego, I just want to do it out of caring, it's hard to tell. That ego is very slick at getting you to think you're doing it out of caring when you're really not. You're doing it because you think you should be doing it. So I want to be kind to people because I know I should. That's a good way to be. Kind is a nice thing. So when I see somebody that needs help, I will be kind to them. So you see somebody that needs help and you go over and you help them out. If you do that because you think you should, then that's coming out of the intellect, and that's your ego operating. The fear is, the fear related to that is the fear of not being kind or of not being helpful, because you've already decided that not being helpful is a bad thing and you don't want to be bad, therefore you are a good person. So I don't know if I'm confusing you or not, but the idea is the difference is your intent, your capital I intent. What is your motivator? What down deep at your being level is really the reason why you're doing what you're doing? If the deep down reason is you're being motivated by fear, then that's your ego talking and your beliefs talking. If what your deep down level is motivated by caring, by love, by caring about other, then it's not your ego talking. So when we get rid of our fear, then ego and the beliefs disappear with it. And then all of our choices are made in the service of love. And then we have a very low entropy. So most of us are struggling with our ego. It's just a common thing. I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to become a higher quality consciousness and get rid of the fear and ego. But it's a long process that we're struggling with it. That's kind of my first shot at that. Do you have some questions coming back that would let me know of whether I've created more questions or given you an answer?
Okay, I think that Jordan must have been listening in and has been satisfied with that question. Mario, you also have a question. Mario and Celso are the two who have translated Tom's My Big Toe into Portuguese. And Tom will be visiting Brazil sometime this year. Mario, if you'd like to talk about that and ask your question, please go ahead.
We are very anxious here because we're doing a lot of work to bring it on here. We just released a brief ebook with some sample of information on My Big Toe to try to help marketing it. And we are just finishing up selecting the place. And, you know, a lot of actions around. It's going to be on 3 and 4 of August, the event with Tom in Brazil. And, you know, we are really anxious about it and working hard, okay? And then about the question, what I was interested in making sure I understand, I have something I think about the binaurals that is related to what you said as an answer to some questions before, okay? They are said some way to be a general impulse on everyone's ability to access LCS, even if untrained, okay? But it seems to me that it should be a lot similar to what you just explained a few questions before on meditation and DMT. If a person is not ready or do not have enough quality of being, it will not necessarily help them to reach the system. Does that sound, this reasoning sounds okay to you? Does it make sense? Because I don't feel the binaurals are necessarily, they are useful for whoever is read, it seems to be, or if you're not read, they will not be useful. Okay, I'm not sure. That's it. Can you comment on it?
Sure. Well, the whole point of meditation and the whole point of being on a spiritual journey is to get yourself ready, to become ready. You don't have to start ready. You have to start from wherever you are, and then through your process growing up, you become more and more ready. That's what growing up means. You become lower and lower entropy. You become higher quality, and that's just it's a path. It takes a long time. It's a lifetime process of doing that. So the binaural beats will help you in that process. If you have a hard time meditating, say, if you're not a very accomplished meditator, then the binaural beats can help you. The binaural beats aren't good for everybody, but people who, let's say, cannot get into a good theta state, that is, an EEG on their brain would come up with a dominant theta as their energy in their brain waves. That's about a 4 hertz frequency. If you're not able to get into that state and hold it for, say, close to an hour, then that's a problem. If you're trying to do things with your mind, and you need to be able to get there and hold that state, then the binaural beats can help you because it will put you in that state. It does brainwave entrainment, kind of sticks you in a theta state and holds you there. So that lets you work in an area that you wouldn't be quite ready for yet. And you're saying, is this a problem? You're getting ahead of taking the cart in front of the horse here. Well, not really. I think if you use the binaural beats, that will give you an ability to speed up your growth process. It'll help you get into a state that will allow you to get acquainted with your own consciousness and to get a bigger picture, and all of that will help you grow up more. So it's a good positive thing on your path, okay, to use that technology. But you also have to know when to take the headphones off and not use the binaural beats. They're just a good tool for beginners who have trouble getting there on their own. You need to progress past that point. If you never progress past that point, then you're using binaural beats as a crutch. and you're stuck with your crutch. You can't walk very well because you can't walk anywhere unless you have a crutch. Well, you need to get beyond the beats to where you can do it without having to listen to them. In the beginning, a crutch is very helpful in helping you get around when you're not able to. So the binaural beats are just this tool that helps you get into a good meditation state. It's not, I don't think there's a problem there with it getting you ahead of yourself. It may, like all times, if you're challenged, if you're particularly challenged, if you get, if you get into a math course that's a little more advanced than you're ready for, it doesn't mean you won't pass the course. It just means you're going to have to work awfully hard to catch up. Well, maybe that's like this too. If you have put on the binaural beats, you're going to get a little ahead of yourself, and you may have to just work a little extra harder to get caught up. But you can get caught up, and it, I think, is a positive thing. So binaural beats are a good training aid for beginners. But when you're not a beginner anymore, you need to let go of them. And even if you've only been, and you don't really know probably whether you're a beginner or not. A lot of people are more ready than they are aware of. And a lot of people are less ready than they think. So just your own opinion of your readiness probably isn't worth a whole lot. The thing to do is take those headphones off and see if you can't function without them. Work at it for a month and see if you can function without them. In the beginning, you'll think you can't, but give it a little time and maybe you can. So does that answer your question, Mario?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mario. Carolyn has a question also for you, Tom. You have said that humanity is not ready for the information that you're going to write in your book, Primal Man, Primal Woman. What would be an example of such information? And do you think that the people who are familiar with your work are ready for this information?
Well, I think the people that are familiar with my work are probably a lot more ready for this information than those that aren't. Yes. It requires someone who is not so caught up in their own beliefs and in their own ego. If you're wrapped up around beliefs, and in this field particularly, the idea of gender, we have a lot of beliefs. We have a lot of social constructs that have us thinking one way or another, right? There's a lot of social constructs out there about the way we should think about these ideas and the way they should be. And when you have a lot of people that are making their choices and seeing their reality through the lens of their beliefs and through the lens of their culture, then you have an audience that is really not quite ready to see things independently of that culture. So I think that's really the key. Our culture has a lot of notions and beliefs about gender and what it means to be male, what it means to be female, the relationship between the two. And because we have so many beliefs and so much hardwiring from our culture, it's a tough subject to discuss rationally because beliefs are not rational. Those beliefs are based on fears, and fears are not rational. So to have a discussion with a lot of people who are full of beliefs and not rational is not really a very productive discussion to have. So that's why I say that in some ways the male-female book is maybe a little before its time. But I don't know that it's a long way before its time. I think that when the time is ready, the system will provide me with the time I need to write it. Right now, I'm very, very busy, and I'm probably going off to some event, almost like every other week, and then it takes me a week or two to get back my backlog or the email caught up. By then I'm ready to go for another week, and it just leaves very little time for anything else right now. So I'm not able to write the book, but I keep writing it in my head. I keep writing chapter after chapter in my mind, and I think maybe it's just not time, which is why I don't have the time. So when I get out of this mode of constantly on a treadmill going from event to event, I believe I will have time to sit down and write, because the way I write, I need blocks of like 4 or 5 hours at a time. I cannot write a book in 10-minute segments, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes something else, between phone calls and between events. I just can't function that way. I need to get into it with hours, big blocks of hours, and I just don't have that now. But when I do have it, and I don't know when that'll be, maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now, I don't know. When I get that time, I think it won't take that long to write it. I think maybe a year and a half, I'll get it out, and hopefully the culture will be ready to have that discussion, and we'll be able to have it without being hung up on a lot of beliefs and social constructs from their culture. If so, I think it's going to be a book that will help people get free. I mean, that's the whole point. I wrote My Big Toe because I thought that people needed to have an understanding of the bigger picture. And if they had that understanding of a bigger picture, it would free them. It would set them, set them loose from the constraints of their fears and their beliefs. And that was important. And this thing on gender is like that too. There's tremendous amount of confusion in our culture and in our society about who we are and what we should be and what does it mean, to be male or be female and relationship. It's a very confusing time. We're probably more confused about it now than we have been ever. I suspect you go back 200 or 300 years, we weren't nearly as confused as we are now. That's because we've been evolving. We've been changing, making progress. And when we change, then we have to kind of re-engineer who we are. Progress gives us a new environment. With that new environment, we relate to each other differently. So that's what I mean by, not quite ready, and I think we will be. And besides that, I'm 74 now. I can't wait but so long to start this thing so that I can get it finished. So I think it's going to be in the next, 4 or 5 years, I'm going to be done with it and have it out there. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hopefully, this is my goal anyway, is to be something that helps bring clarity and peace and satisfaction to lots and lots of people who better understand themselves and who they are, and helps them kind of take off the layers of social conditioning and the layers of belief that they've been inculcated with in our culture since they were born, and find themselves as a kind of a genuine human being that's able to just be human and express their humanness in a very positive way. So the idea is to find more, more peace with ourselves, more truth in ourselves. So that's what I hope to do. But yes, it's on my webpage if you want to go read just a blink of it. It's maybe 2 or 3% of it, a little bit of the logical backbone of it, but there's much that's not said there. Much that's not said. So it's one of those books I've been working on now for 20 years. And actually, the only reason that 20 pages is there is that I mentioned it. Somebody said, well, Tom, what other things are you working on? And I just happened to mention that, which was probably a big mistake, because as soon as I mentioned it, people wanted to know about it. So that's why I wrote that 20 pages and put it on my website, just so I'd have something that I could point them to what it was about. But it's been in my mind for a long time. Be patient. I'll get it out there one day.